Chapter 5 Beyond the Comfort Zone. Every adolescent business reaches a point where it pushes beyond its owner's comfort zone, the boundary within which he feels secure in his ability to control his environment, and outside of which he begins to lose that control. The technician's boundary is determined by how much he can do himself. The manager is defined by how many technicians he can supervise effectively or how many subordinate managers can he organize into a productive effort. The entrepreneur's boundary is a function of how many managers he can engage in pursuit of his vision. As a business grows, it invariably exceeds its owner's ability to control it, to touch, feel, and see the work that needs to be done, and to inspect its progress personally as every technician needs to do. After desperation, he does what he knows how to do rather than what he doesn't, thereby abdicating his role as manager and passing his accountability down to someone else, a Harry. At that point, his desperation turns into hope. He hopes that Harry will handle it so that he won't have to worry about it anymore. But Harry has needs of his own. Harry is also a technician. He needs more direction than the technician can give him. He needs to know why he's doing what he's doing. He needs to know the results he's accountable for and the standards against which he works is being evaluated. He also needs to know where the business is going and where his accountabilities fit into its overall strategy. To produce effectively, Harry needs something the technician turned business owner is incapable of giving him, a manager, and the lack of one causes the business to go into tailspin. And as a business grows beyond the owner's comfort zone, as the tailspin accelerates, there are only three courses of action to be taken. Only three ways the business can turn. It can return to infancy, it can go for broke, or it can hang on for a dear life. Let's take a look at each. Getting small again. One of the most consistent and predictable reactions of the technician turned business owner to adolescent chaos is the decision to get small again. If you can't control the chaos, get rid of it. Go back to the way it used to be when you did everything yourself, when you didn't have people to worry about, or too many customers, or too many unpayable payables and unreceivable receivables, or too much inventory. In short, you go back to the time when business was simple, back to infancy. And thousands upon thousands of technicians do just that. They get rid of their people, they get rid of their inventory, wrap up their payables in a large bag, rent a small facility, put the machine in the middle, put the telephone by the machine, and go back to doing it all by themselves again. They go back to being the owner, sole proprietor, chief cook, and bottle washer, doing everything that needs to be done all alone, but comfortable with the feeling of regained control. What can go wrong? They think to themselves, forgetting at once that they've been there before. Predictably, this too takes its toll. One morning, it could be 6 weeks or 6 years following the day you got small again. The inevitable happens. You wake up in bed and your spouse turns to you and says, "What's wrong? You're not looking too good." "I'm not feeling too good," you answer. "Do you want to talk about it?" he or she asks. "It's simple," you say. "I don't want to go in there anymore." Then your spouse asks you the obvious question. But if you don't, who will? And all of a sudden you are struck with the reality of your condition. You realize something you've avoided all these years. You come face to face with the unavoidable truth. You don't own a business, you own a job. What's more, it's the worst job in the world. You can't close it when you want to, because if it's closed, you don't get paid. You can't leave it when you want to, because when you leave, there's nobody there to do the work. You can't sell it when you want to, because who wants to buy a job? At that point, you feel the despair and the cynicism almost every small business owner gets to feel. If there was ever a dream, however small, it's gone, and with it, any desire to keep busy, busy, busy. You don't wash the windows anymore. You don't sweep the floors. The customers become a problem rather than an opportunity, because if somebody buys something, you're going to have to do the work. Your standards of dress begin to deteriorate. The sign on the front door fades and peels, and you don't care. For when the dream is gone, the only thing left is work, the tyranny of routine, the day to day grind of purposeless activity. Finally, you close the door. There's nothing to keep you there anymore. According to the Small Business Administration, more than 400,000 such businesses close their doors in the United States every year. And it's understandable. Your business, once the shining promise of your life, and now no promise at all, has gradually become a mortuary for dead dreams. Going for broke. The adolescent business has another alternative that is certainly less painful and decidedly more dramatic than getting small. It can just keep growing faster and faster until it self-destructs of its own momentum. The roll call is endless. ITEL, Osborne Computer, Colco, and countless more, all such going for broke companies were started with an entrepreneurial seizure by a technician who focused on the wrong end of the business, the commodity the business made, rather than the business itself. Going for broke businesses are a sign of our time. They are a high-tech phenomenon. With the explosion of new technology and the number of those who create it, a whole new breed of technicians has flocked to the business arena. Along with these wizards, an avalanche of new products has thundered through the wide open doors of an enthralled and receptive marketplace. Unfortunately, most of these companies barely get through the doors before the uncontrollable momentum that got them there forces them to stumble and then fall. All the excesses of adolescence, frustrating and bewildering as they might be in normal expanding company, are disastrous in a going for broke business. As quickly as it grows, chaos grows even faster. For tied to the tail of a technological breakthrough, the technician and his people barely break free long enough to gain some perspective about their condition. The demand for the commodity of which they are so proud quickly exceeds their chronically adolescent ability to produce it. The result is almost always catastrophic. The business explodes, leaving behind it people who most often justify the explosion as an inevitable consequence of doing business on a fast track, where luck and speed and a brilliant bit of technological daring-do are the necessary component for making it big. The reality is otherwise. Luck and speed and brilliant technology have never been enough, because somebody is always luckier, faster, and technologically brighter. Unfortunately, once on a fast track, there's precious little time to listen. The race is won by reflex, a stroke of genius, or a stroke of luck. Going for broke is the high-tech equivalent of Russian roulette, oftentimes played by people who don't even know the gun is loaded. Adolescent survival. The most tragic possibility of all for an adolescent business is that it actually survives. You're an incredibly wrong-willed, stubborn, single-minded individual who's determined not to be beaten. You go into your business every morning with a vengeance, absolutely convinced that it's a jungle out there and fully committed to doing whatever is necessary to survive. And you do survive, kicking and scratching, beating up your people and your customers, ranting and raving at your family and friends because after all, you've got to keep the business going. And you know there's only one way to do it. You've got to be there all the time. In adolescent survival, you're consumed by the business and the possibility of losing it, and so you put everything you have into it, and for whatever reason, you manage to keep it going, day after day, fighting the same battle in exactly the same way you did the day before. You never change. Night after night, you go home to unwind, only to wind up even tighter in anticipation of tomorrow. Finally, your business doesn't explode, but you do. You're like a 12-cylinder engine working on one cylinder, pumping away, trying with everything you've got to produce 12 cylinders worth of result. But finally, and inevitably, there's nothing left. There's simply nothing more you can do except face the fact that one cylinder can produce the result of 12, no matter how hard it tries. Something has to give, and that something is you. Does this sound familiar? Well, if you've been in business for a while, it should. And if you haven't been in business for long, it probably will sound familiar one day. Because the tragedy is that the condition of infancy and adolescence dominates American small business. It is the condition in most of the small businesses we at eMeet Worldwide have visited over the past 24 years, a condition of rampant confusion and wasted spirits. It didn't need to happen. There's a better way. The nerve I had touched earlier in Sarah had diminished enough for her to collect her thoughts. How did you know? She asked me quietly. Have you ever been talking to someone about me? She said, in part wanting to believe I knew more about her story than I had let on, and in part knowing she was just like everyone else. She knew the answer. Before I could confirm it, she said, I got small again, and I still don't understand what happened. She looked around the small shop as though seeing someone or something I couldn't. My Harry was Elizabeth, she sighed. I hired her when the business was only 6 months old. She did everything for me. Elizabeth did. She was absolutely incredible. I don't know what I would have done without her. She did the books, she helped me bake, she cleaned up in the morning, and after we closed, she hired my first 3 employees, taught them how to do the various jobs that needed to be done. She was always here when I needed her. And as the business grew over the next 2 years, Elizabeth took one more. Elizabeth took on more and more of the responsibility for the business. She worked as hard as I did, and she seems to love it here. And me, she seems to love me too. Goodness knows, I loved her. And then one day, it was on Wednesday, June 10th, I believe. At 7 in the morning, she called me and told me she couldn't be coming in any longer. That she had taken another job. That she couldn't afford to work for what I was paying her. Just like that, I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe that she meant it. I thought it was a joke. I laughed and said, Come on, Elizabeth, or something like that. And Elizabeth said she was sorry and then hung up. Hung up. Just hung up. Well, I stood there and wept, and then I felt fear, a fear I hadn't ever felt before. I felt cold inside. How could this be? I thought to myself. How could someone I thought I knew so well, someone I trusted so much, have suddenly become a stranger? What in the world did this say about me? About my lack of judgment? About the conversations I should have had with Elizabeth but didn't? But the pies needed to be removed from the oven, and the floors needed to be cleaned, and the shop prepared for opening. And so, despite the pain I was feeling, the sickness in my stomach, I went to work, and I haven't stopped since. The people she hired left soon afterwards. To be honest with you, I never really had a connection with them. They were Elizabeth's people. When I think back now, I see how easy it was for me to do, how easy it was for me to become absorbed by the work rather than the people. And I guess they knew that, because after Elizabeth left, they all seemed to regard me with suspicion, like I had let her go without telling them or something. If Elizabeth could leave a woman like that, what did it say about them for staying? At least, that's what I believe they were thinking. Who knew? I was too devastated to ask. Since then, I haven't had the heart to hire someone to replace them. The thought of it is terrifying to me. The thought of bringing strangers into my life like that again feels like a risk I don't want to take. And so I do it all myself. And I know I can't do it much longer. Besides which, what's the point? She sighed deeply and looked across at me. So, there's my comfort zone, she said. What do I do about that? Start all over again, but differently this time. I answered. It's the only way out of the trap. Most of us have had the experience of being disappointed by someone in whom we have put our trust as a direct result of our indifference or lack of understanding or lack of skill or lack of attention. And most of us learn eventually, if for no other reason than because we realize that we can't be everywhere at once, to trust again. But trust can only take us so far. Trust alone can set us up to repeat those same disappointing experiences, because true trust comes from knowing, not from blind faith. And to know, one must understand. And to understand, one must have an intimate awareness of what conditions are truly present. What people know and what they don't. What people do and what they don't. What people want and what they don't. how people do what they do and how people don't, who people are and who they aren't. In short, Sarah trusted Elizabeth blindly. Sarah simply wanted to believe in Elizabeth. It was easier that way, because if Sarah trusted blindly, if she simply left it all up to chance, she wouldn't be forced to do the work she didn't want to do. The force of coming to agreement about what her relationship with Elizabeth was about, what role each of them was there to play, what it meant for Sarah to be an owner and Elizabeth to be her employee, what it meant for Sarah to set out the rules of the game that she was expecting Elizabeth to play. Because Sarah didn't feel comfortable in this role of the owner, this role of the entrepreneur, this role of a business person. She left everything up to chance. She abdicated her accountability as an owner and took on the role of just another employee. She avoided fully participating in her relationship with Elizabeth and, in the process, created a dynamic between herself and her employee built on a weak structure, an omission that foretold Elizabeth's inevitable departure and Sarah's inevitable pain. I certainly didn't need to tell Sarah that she had no one to blame but herself. I just needed to find the right way to show her how she could do it differently the next time. The next time, I said, you'll know that your business is destined to grow and that once it does, your job is going to be significantly different. For now, that's all you need. Small, smaller, smallest. How big is small? 1 person? 10 people? 60 people? 150 people? To a Fortune 500 company, a Fortune 1000 company is small. To a Fortune 1000 company, a Fortune 3000 company is small. To a 10-person company, a 2-person company is small. The true question is not how small a business should be, but how big. How big can your business naturally become, with the operative word being naturally? Because whatever the size is, any limitation you place on its growth is unnatural, shaped not by the market or by your lack of capital, even though that may play a part, but by your own personal limitations, your lack of skill, knowledge, and experience, and most of all, passion for growing a healthy, functionally dynamic, extraordinary business. In this regard, getting small is, rather than an intentional act, a reaction to the pain and fear induced by uncontrolled and uncontrollable growth, both of which could have been anticipated provided the owner had been prepared to facilitate the growth in a balanced, healthy, and proactive way. But to do that requires intentions at the outset of the business, entrepreneurial intention, as well as willingness, no, a true passion for the personal transformation such a process will call for. Accessing new skills, new understanding, new knowledge, new emotional depth, new wisdom. You might say that the chaos that takes place in every adolescent business can produce one of two outcomes for the small business owner who suddenly finds himself in the middle of it. For the truly passionate owner, Don John's warrior, it can provide him with an opportunity to transmute his personal lead into gold. Or the fires can become so fearsome that he shrinks back to the safety of the smaller life he came from not too long before. The lead I've got is better than the goal I haven't got. Better safe than sorry. So, in this context, a business that gets small again is a business reduced to the level of its owner's personal resistance to change, to its owner's comfort zone, in which the owner waits and works and waits, hoping for something positive to happen. This condition reminds me of a line from Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot, in which Stragon, having waited around for days hoping the mythical Godot will arrive and relieve him of his misery, turns to his companion, Vladimir, and says, "I can't go on like this," to which Vladimir replies, "That's what you think." So, if the natural disposition of every business is to either grow or contract, and it is, there's no denying that, then getting small again is the natural inclination of the technician turned owner to shrink from the unknown, to shrink from the business she has created, constrain the business from creating demands on her to which she feels hopelessly inadequate to respond appropriately. In short, businesses that get small again die. They literally implode upon themselves, not right away necessarily, but over time they die. They can't do anything else. And the result of that is enormous disappointment, lost investment, shattered lives, not only the owners, but those of the employees, the families of both the owners and the employees, the customers, the suppliers, the lenders, all of those people whose lives have somehow been intertwined with the life of this small business and now with its death. The tragedy is that all this could have been prevented had the business been started differently, and had the technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure approached the business in a broader, more entrepreneurial way. Of course, you couldn't have anticipated everything that has happened to you so far in your business, I said to Sarah. But you could have anticipated much of it. You could have anticipated what happened to Elizabeth and people she hired. You could have anticipated that people would love your pies and that the business would therefore have to grow. You could have anticipated that growth would bring additional responsibilities, additional skills required, additional capital needed to respond to the added demand that growth always places on a business and on people. In short, while you could have, while you couldn't have known everything, you could certainly have known more than you do. And that's your job, Sarah, the job of the owner. And if you don't do it, nobody will. Simply put, your job is to prepare yourself and your business for growth, to educate yourself sufficiently so that as your business grows, the business foundation and structure can carry the additional weight. And as awesome a responsibility as they may seem to you, you have no other choice if your business is to thrive, that is. It's up to you to dictate your business rate of growth as best as you can by understanding the key processes that needs to be performed and the key objectives that need to be achieved and the key position you are aiming your business to hold in the marketplace. By asking the right questions such as, where do I wish to be? When do I wish to be there? How much capital will that take? How many people doing what work and how? What technology will be required? How large a space will be needed? At benchmark 1, at benchmark 2, at benchmark 3. Will you be wrong at times? Will you make mistakes? Will you change your mind? Of course you will, more often than not. But, done right, you will also have contingency plans in place. Best case, worst case, and sometimes you will simply fly by the seat of your pants. You will go with the flow, follow your intuition. But all the while, even while you're guessing, the key is to plan, envision, and articulate what you see in the future, both for yourself and for your employees. Because if you don't articulate it, write it down clearly so others can understand it, you don't own it. And do you know that in all the years I've been doing this work with the small business owners, out of the thousands upon thousands we've met, there have only been a few who had any plans at all. Nothing written, nothing committed to paper, nothing concrete at all. Remember, Sarah, any plan is better than no plan. Because in the process of defining the future, the plan begins to shape itself to reality, both the reality of the business out there and the reality you are able to create in here. And those two realities merge. They form a new reality. Call it your reality. Call it the unique invention that is uniquely yours. The reality of your mind and your heart, uniting with all the elements of your business and your business with the world, shaping, designing, collaborating to form something that never existed before in exactly that way. And that is the sign of a mature company. A mature company is started differently than all the rest. A mature company is founded on a broader perspective, an entrepreneurial perspective, a more intelligent point of view about building a business that works not because of you, but without you. And because it starts that way, it is more likely to continue that way. And therein resides the true difference between an adolescent company, where everything is left up to chance, and a mature company, where there is a vision against which the present is shaped. But I'm getting ahead of myself, I said. The important thing is that your experience could have been completely different. that there is an entirely different way to start a business than the way you and the most technician turned business owners start theirs, and that anyone can do it. I looked at Sarah and caught the glow in her eyes. I'm inspired by the idea of it, she said softly. All of a sudden, everything that had looked so dark feels light again. But no sooner had she begun to let herself thrill to the idea of building a business that some other thought, a dark thought, captured her attention. But what do I do about Elizabeth? She said. What do I do about Elizabeth? The question every technician turned owner wants answered. As though by answering that question, everything else will be answered. As if the answer to all of the frustration most small business owners experience is somehow tied to particular people. As if within the complexity of Sarah's relationship with Elizabeth, within all relationship for that matter, there exists some key which, once turned, could make everything right again. Well, I'm no genius, but I know that there is no such key. There's just us, you and me, fumbling about in our often inadequate way, constantly being surprised by our own and other people's behavior, how badly we've done it, how out of touch with our own and others' feelings we've discovered ourselves to be. I looked Sarah in the eye, got very quiet, and said, Sarah, the real question is not what to do about Elizabeth, but what do you do about all the Elizabeths in your future? You did the best you could, and so did Elizabeth. It's time to get on with your life, to build your business in an unlivingly way. Are you ready? Sarah smiled at me, her eyes positively gleaming. I'm ready if you are, she said. Then, let's talk about maturity for a minute, I said, because that's where your future lies.